Yes, well, hello, Mirador. We're rather late starting, I'm afraid, because of technical issues in the Black Horse. But it's your Wednesday slot with myself and Suzi to chat. I'm afraid not for very long this morning because of the late start, for about half an hour or so. Suzi, I know, is a private carer, self-employed, independent of the NHS. And have you ever worked for the NHS, Suzi?
Not as a carer. I've worked in a different capacity within an assessment authority.
The reason I'm asking is you may have seen the statistics on the news this morning that in a very recent Mori poll that's been done, only 26% of those polled were satisfied with the care from the NHS. Now that means 74%, and sadly I'm one of them, are not satisfied. My reasons for being dissatisfied is that it's now over 2.5 years since I first went to my GP about very bad left knee pain. I knew why it was painful. I'd had a meniscus, a cartilage taken out years ago because I'd torn it playing sport. And inevitably, as I've got older, wear and tear has led to arthritis eating away at the upper cartilage. And so it's bone on bone. And it's really very painful. I'm just going to let Mr. Keith in.
Any plans for the weekend?
Morning.
Hello, Keith.
I'm just closing my window because there's wind. Morning.
Morning.
Keith, I've opened the programme on the subject of the very low approval rate nationwide for the NHS.
Yes.
And I was in the process of explaining to Suzi and the viewers why, unfortunately, I am in the 74% dissatisfied. I don't like being dissatisfied with the NHS, but it's been years now since I first reported the arthritic problem in my left knee. I've had various x-rays, some of which have been completely lost. On the 9th of May of last year, I was referred and had an appointment in a centre of excellence in Crowborough called the Horder Centre. And that consultant, and I've still got his letter, has basically said, you need a knee replacement and it needs straightening, and it's bone on bone. Right, it's now stating the obvious, the 27th of March of 2024, they transferred me administratively to Sussex hospitals because they decided the journey there for follow-up appointments, particularly debilitated by the operation itself, was too much. I am yet to hear from any hospital in Sussex to even be seen for the first time. So that's my tale of woe. And I know I'm not the only one. We have a delightful post lady here, and both her knees have had it. She's managed one operation, that took forever to arrange, and she's got to have the other knee done as well, and she has no idea when that will be. So I just wondered what your views are.
Are you asking Suzi or me? I'm sorry. Some background noise.
Yes, I heard the background noise, Keith. We can't complain because it is a public house.
Oh no, and actually I encourage it. I don't want to go the BBC route and cut ourselves off in a tiny little cube. It's ridiculous. We deal in sound and we cut out sound. You know?
Well, I am, because it's predominantly mine and Suzi's programme, I'm going to go to Suzi as to whether she has any views on this.
I mean, for me, I mean, I've never had anything wrong with me. So I've never had any particular experience of hospitals, or I think the biggest thing I've ever done was 3 stitches in my finger for sticking it in a lawnmower, which was pretty stupid of me, but there you go.
We've all done that.
But sorry?
We've all done that.
So that's, I've got in Uckfield, we have a brilliant community hospital, and they're very, very good at the minor injuries, so they're fantastic. I cannot fault them. But in terms of the wider issue, particularly some of my clients, I've had some horrific stories. One of my clients begged his daughter to bring him home, and he was in such a state. He said, "Get me out of here! You've got to get me out of here." And a lovely, lovely man. But I nursed him. I'm not a nurse, but it was a nursing role. Like, he was permanently on oxygen and in bed, and I had to bathe him. And he ended up going back into the community hospital in Uckfield and died fairly shortly afterwards, which is, dreadful, because he's such a lovely, lovely man, but just his experience. And another friend of mine broke her ankle very badly, and this has been going on 2 years now, and she was left in corridors for hours. She couldn't walk, and she used to just ring me up crying. And I couldn't help her. I just want to be able to cry on the phone to somebody. She's in so much pain, and I can't leave the house. They keep saying, "Come to the hospital." I was like, "Well, I can't get there." She fell down the stairs and broke her ankle. And this has been 2 years now, this poor lady.
Yes, I had a neighbour who did the same and wrecked his knee on his own front doorstep. And even now, he isn't recovering. Now, that is not the fault of the NHS. I'm sure they did their very best, but it's easily done the older you get.
Yeah.
I mean, Keith falls over all the time. I'm amazed he's not in hospital all the time.
Bounce as well.
Is that true? You're made of rubber, Mr. Hayes?
Yes. I'm very flexible.
Yeah. Is there a Mr. Men book after you called Mr. Bounce?
I'm little Miss Clumsy.
Yeah, we have
I'll tell you, I've got a red bump from when I bounced to try and stand up.
Yes, well, at least you land on your bum.
That's just when it's controlled. When it's not controlled, then I thank God, in the main, I've learned how to fall.
Yeah.
The trouble is that you don't know where it's going to strike, and there may be something in the way. That's the big danger.
I realise that.
Way down.
That is a great worry.
And in my track, the biggest cause of death, the death word, is a fall. And that is the catalyst of change. And every person I know has had a bad fall. That is the catalyst, and then sadly, it's a downward spiral. Unless you're very, very lucky. I know obviously people do come back, but that's my greatest fear. When I hear one of my clients has had a fall, I know that's the sort of way to the end.
Well, my dear father, in his early 70s, had a very bad fall and broke his hip. Went into the Stockport Hospital, which is the town we lived in. They repaired the hip beautifully, but they failed to mobilise him, and he got static pneumonia, and that killed him. Horrible experience, because I didn't have to, but I went up north to be with him as much as I could. And it's when they move you into the death room, as they call it, that's the heart-wrenching bit.
Yeah.
But
it's just very sad. I've got 2 friends. One's her mum fell downstairs and broke her leg, and the other one, his mum broke her arm. Both of them went to hospital and never came out.
Yes, as you say, and these are just our local experiences. It must be
Even
very
my mum.
like, yeah. Any observations you'd like to make, Mr. Keith?
Yes, my experience of the medical staff here, both in the Brighton Hospital the new sort of emergency team that will tear up to your house, and the surgery has been very good.
Good.
Where it falls down is the administration.
Yeah.
I have been trying to see a doctor for 4 to 6 weeks now, and trying to even speak to somebody about such an incident is impossible. And yet I have a letter somewhere saying that because of my age, I've got a dedicated doctor that I should ask for. Well, I've asked for the dedicated doctor and told she's booked up with appointments for 6 weeks. But it actually is a culture. It's the culture we've got to change. I was told, perhaps I heard mistakenly, to go down to the surgery at 8 o'clock in the morning, and then I would be ahead of the pack, and I could make a proper appointment. I arrived at 8 o'clock, and there were two ladies going in, and they were receptionists who are the medical staff to all intents and purposes now. And I said, this system isn't working, is it? And the one said, it is inside. Now, in industry, as you both well know, there are two attitudes. One is you are dictated to by the procedures inside and bugger the patient or the customer, or you are customer oriented and you alter your procedures inside to satisfy that. They are, because it's new to them, they are focused on getting their procedures right. And if in fact that means the patient is ignored, so be it. And until they change that culture, we're going to have this dissatisfaction. We're going to have the disruption. We're not going to get the service. And it doesn't matter how good the doctor is. If you can't see him, it doesn't do you any good.
Quite right. I mean, the culture at my local surgery has changed radically and not for the better. They encourage you not to ring up. They have everything done online. You put in what's called a complaint form or an issue form, and you email them effectively, and then it's their choice whether they get back to you or not. I mean, my GP, or mine and my family's GP, retired 2 years ago. I had to ring them up to ask, to whom have we now been allocated? And we've been allocated to a new arrival, a female doctor, who comes highly recommended, but I have been unable to see her entirely. My wife Jackie, who is an MS sufferer, is always being told, we're onto it. In an emergency, we've got a special kit. If you have a seizure, if you have an attack, get onto us, blah, blah, blah. Well, they're not open most of the time. And as I say, they're discouraging phone calls. Now, Suzi has already told me and the viewer that she's never really been poorly or injured. So mercifully, and I'm very pleased for her, she's never had to tackle any of this. But it's, particularly as you get older, age does take its toll. If you then just add another layer of stress to the aging person on that by making everything online, no personal contact, no access to a doctor. I mean, at the beginning of my knee problems, I saw my GP once, and that was at his insistence, because until then I was sent to a physiotherapist, and that's why the x-rays got messed up. So yes, I think the administration plays a huge part, Keith. And I suspect that very low percentage of satisfaction doesn't just mean hospitals and operations, it will mean GPs, won't it?
Well, on one of the front pages of one of the newspapers, I forget which one now, it does say that the satisfaction with GPs has dropped from 29% the last time the survey was taken to 21% now. So yes, the GP figures very much in this survey.
I mean, for a percentage of satisfaction to be the lowest it has ever been for 40 years speaks volumes, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I must say, Philip, I mean, you've heard me rail against a computer age. I recognise, so that people don't think I'm stupid, I recognise we couldn't be broadcasting this way if it wasn't for computers.
Of course.
But the reliance has become 100%. The district council is exactly the same. Do things online. Their own statistics. If you bother to go and take a look at the statistics, their own statistics are that over 50% of people were born so that they were not mature in 1997, which is when Windows first came in. That means that most people are over 50, and you're asking them to deal in something that they're not really familiar with. They don't have the habit that the youngsters have. And the statistics are there for our leaders, and they don't bloody well pay attention to them. And it's disgraceful and disgusting. And frankly, I think it's time we turfed them out and started again.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead, Susie.
Well, I was about to. Before my mum passed away about 8 years ago, and this is one of her big bugbears. Was that every time she asked people a question, they went, "Oh, Google it," and she got so fed up. It was like, "Why can't people just answer questions anymore? Why do I have to go and Google?" She says, "What if I don't know how to use a computer?" And all these other people have no knowledge of using tablets. The complexity of some of the technology these days is very simple to the younger generation, but I work with a lot of people who are unable to work a computer or unable to do shopping online. They rely on their family to do the shopping online, and they can't get out. And one of my clients, going back to the doctors and the GPs, she used to get so stressed about ringing up the doctors that I would do it for her, because she found the whole process so incredibly stressful, and she was obviously caring for her husband at the time too. So I took that pressure off her by doing the phone calls for her.
Yeah, well, this is where Keith's administration point is so valid. Too much management, too many procedures and rules, simply diluting, if not washing away, any personal touch whatsoever. I mean, speaking for myself, I only learned to go online properly because of my job. And of course, when I started my job 43 years ago, now longer, these things didn't exist. And when in the court system, we had the introduction of what they called the digital court system, where paperwork was banned. There were during the experimental phase, there were whole court centres, one of which was Reading Crown Court, where papers were banned. If you had a brief in hard copy, the usher or the clerk would take it off you physically, and you were forced to use IT. And I was glad for many reasons that I retired when I did retire, because they were constantly introducing variations on this software and hardware that I was not coping with. I simply wasn't coping with it. So I got out at the right time. But it's a devil, it really is.
Yeah. Yesterday, Philip, in one of the papers, there was a story about another survey which showed that a huge percentage of people from all disciplines, government, industry, and so on, are terrified of criticism from trolls. So,
yes.
So as a consequence, they are introducing systems that are very difficult for people to access or use, on the basis that what they don't hear and what they don't know can't hurt them.
Yeah. Yeah, trolling and cyber attacks. Well, you covered the cyber attack in a live morning program a week or so ago, didn't you?
Yes.
The Chinese and the Russians are always at it, I'm afraid, always. And it's not just them. Iran will be doing it as well. North Korea, even they can do it. I mean, they do have a level of technology that allows them to do it. But talking of which, this is a completely tangential subject. I saw on the news on the BBC website, I think yesterday, a photograph of Alan Titchmarsh doing some gardening. And it was a program that was being broadcast using a USB stick in North Korea. And they had blotted out his trousers. And the reason they blotted his trousers out was because he was wearing jeans. And in North Korea, you're not allowed to wear jeans because they are deemed to be an example of Western US imperialism. So none of the viewers in North Korea, and there wouldn't have been very many, so they couldn't see his jeans. They blotted it all out. I mean, talk about Big Brother. It's extraordinary.
It's unbelievable, isn't it?
But that's how they have to live over there. Terrible. Terrible. Yes, now, has anything else happened since we last spoke, Suzi, that might interest us?
Oh, in terms of news or in life in general?
Well, if I'm prying, stop me, but I know from you that you are now lodger free.
Oh, right, yes. Oh, yes, that's all kicked off last Thursday. After a very pleasant day in the garden, building a gazebo with my partner, and went to the pub for a drink and had a nice meal, sat down for dinner, and my lovely lodger from Poland decided to come down and kick off, which resulted in the police being called and her being escorted out of the house. And she's since returned to her old house, which is just down the road, really, to the two men that kicked her out of that house for aggressive behaviour. And I have another Polish friend who has told me that the police have been called out many times on her. So I obviously need to be a bit more discerning when I take lodgers in and stop rescuing people. My problem is a rescuer. I am a rescuer, so I need to rein myself in. Yes,
you need to try and not be a good Samaritan all the time.
I know it's hard,
particularly to desperate Eastern Europeans.
Yes, I've had my own version of Brexit in the house this week.
Well, absolutely. But now, of course, after good riddance, you have your home to yourself, your cats, and your two rabbits.
And my doggy. But yes, the first night of freedom last night. Yes, very liberated.
And one of your rabbits has learned how to use the cat flap.
Yeah.
Which I find
it's rather amusing.
Which I find very amusing.
It's hilarious. She just was in the garden yesterday, and you suddenly just saw this little head poke out of the cat flap and pop back in again. And then the other morning, I'd gone to bed late, so I just didn't bother to putting them to sleep, to putting them to bed. And I woke up to the two of them. She's encouraged the other one to come upstairs, and the two of them are thundering around underneath my bed like kittens.
Yeah.
At 5 a.m.
Lovely.
So yes, lovely. Very uplifting.
Something else I spotted on the news today, which I think is a salutary piece of information, is that you cannot travel to the European Union on a passport that is more than 10 years old. So the old practice of the passport agency allowing you a 9 to 12 month period of grace, after Brexit, that's gone. So there's this poor bloke who's taken his whole family to France Well, he didn't, because they wouldn't let him on the plane. So the rest of his family were able to fly to Limoges or wherever it was, where his parents live, and he couldn't travel. And there was no way on earth he would get a passport in half a day. So completely ruined his holiday. Completely. So it's worth remembering, check if you're going abroad that your passport is no more than 10 years old.
Right, I'm going away at the end of next month, so I better tell them that I should be doing that straight away.
Well, please do, because time passes. I mean, my passport expired on me 3 years ago and I didn't realise.
I had to do a mad dash to Cardiff. Is it Cardiff? No, I can't remember. It was Cardiff, somewhere in Wales, a couple of years ago. I'd had a couple of holidays cancelled because of COVID, and then I rearranged it, but I forgot to check my passport. And it was suddenly, yes, I had to go all the way down to my nearest point was Wales to get a new passport. They did do it very efficiently, but it was a bit of a panic.
Yeah, I think that would have been Newport.
Yeah, I know it was in Wales.
Well, Wales is quite a large country, you know, Susie.
Yeah.
It could have been anywhere.
Yeah.
But I think in all seriousness, I think the passport agency is either Petty France or Victoria Station or Newport on the Welsh-English border.
Yeah, I know it was very near. I went with a friend of mine. We took in Bath at the same time.
Yeah, I'm confident that was Newport.
Yeah.
Not that it matters. So it was one of these express fast track things, was it?
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, my wife just renewed her passport with the help of my son, who is, you know, brilliant at digital photographs. You know, if you can do it properly, you don't need these old-fashioned passport photographs anymore. You do the application online in good time. You upload the image. They confirm it's all done and okay. You pay your money, and I think her passport arrived within like 10 days. Very slick, very slick. So if you get somebody who knows what they're doing, like my youngest, my second son, then you're in business. Well, I see the time, Ms. Scorpio. Sadly, I think you need to leave us.
Sadly, I do. It's been very lovely chatting to you both.
Right, well, I'm going to end the stream, but could you both just stay on briefly?
Yeah.